Everyone trusted my grandfather, calm, respected, untouchable. While my grandmother was still setting the table, he was already replacing her. I didn't confront him in private, I waited. And when I spoke, the whole family heard the truth at once. Some men don't need forgiveness. They need witnesses. They used that word about me my whole life. Too much. Too loud when I laughed. Too sharp when I spoke. Too alive for a house that worshipped silence. In our family, silence meant safety. Order meant morality. And my grandfather was the high priest of both. Everything in his house had a place. Chairs aligned, clocks synced, voices lowered the moment he entered a room. Nothing chaotic survived him for long. I tried. God, I tried. I learned to sit straighter, to speak later, to swallow reactions before they embarrassed someone, usually him. My grandmother would squeeze my wrist under the table. Not hard, just enough. A warning. Not for my sake, for hers. Because when I was too much, he became colder, sharper, more precise, and she paid for it in silence. Back then, I thought I was the problem, that my emotions disrupted something sacred. Now I understand the truth. I wasn't too much. I was the only thing in that house that refused to shrink. And men like him can forgive many things, but never that. Everyone trusted my grandfather, not because he was kind, because he was calm. He spoke slowly. He listened just long enough. He nodded like a verdict. People mistook that for wisdom. At family gatherings, he sat at the center of the table without trying. Conversations bent toward him. Decisions waited for his approval. He never demanded control. He designed rooms where control happened naturally. When he looked at you, you felt evaluated, not judged, measured, useful or unnecessary. I used to think he was an anchor, something solid in a loud world, a man who kept chaos out. But anchors don't just hold ships in place, they keep them from leaving. He smiled at me the way you smile at a noise you can't turn off. Patient, tight. When I talked too fast, he corrected my tone. When I laughed too loud, he changed the subject. When I asked questions, he answered something else. Always polite, always controlled. Nothing about him was violent. And that's what made him dangerous. Because no one ever suspects the man who looks like order. Routine was his favorite weapon, because it never looked like one. Breakfast at the same minute every morning, the radio at the same volume, the same chair, the same silence. My grandmother learned the rhythm by heart, not because she liked it, because missing a beat had consequences. If dinner was late, he sighed. If salt wasn't on the table, he paused. If she spoke out of turn, he smiled. Correction disguised as patience. She adjusted herself constantly, her voice first, then her posture, then her opinions. Eventually, her wants stopped showing up at all. People said she was calm. They said marriage had softened her. They said she was lucky. They didn't see what routine does when it tightens. Every repeated day made her smaller, more efficient, less visible. She moved through the house like an apology. Quiet, careful, predictable. He called it stability. I watched it become dependency, because when everything is scheduled, even your breathing stops feeling like it belongs to you. And once a woman forgets her own rhythm, a man like him doesn't need to raise his voice. The silence does it for him. My grandmother never said she was unhappy. She didn't need to. Her body spoke for her. Her hands shook when she poured tea, even when the cup was steady. Her shoulders flinched before he corrected her, like muscle memory learned too well. She smiled too early, apologized too fast, stopped mid-sentence without realizing it. That's what control looks like when it settles into flesh. He never yelled, never hit, never threatened. He just watched. And when someone is watched long enough, they begin to police themselves. She folded inward year by year, her clothes darker, her movements smaller, her presence thinner. Family said she was peaceful now. That age had softened her. That marriage had grounded her. They mistook submission for serenity. I saw her at night, standing in the kitchen, lights off, hands resting on the counter, as if she needed to remember where she ended. I wanted to scream for her, shake her, break the quiet. But she had survived by becoming quiet. And men like him don't need obedience spoken aloud. They recognize it instantly. It's the sound of a woman forgetting she ever had a voice. I didn't catch him in bed. There was no dramatic reveal. It was worse than that. It was small, casual, careless. A smell on his jacket that didn't belong to our house. Too sweet, too alive. A neighbor's laugh through a wall that was supposed to be solid. A pause when he said her name. Just a fraction too long. He stopped locking his phone. Stopped pretending to be careful. Because men like him don't fear being exposed. They fear being challenged. I watched my grandmother serve him dinner that night. Watched her place the plate perfectly in front of him. Watched her wait for his nod before sitting down. And suddenly everything aligned. The routine, the silence, the shrinking. This wasn't a mistake. It wasn't passion. It wasn't loneliness. It was entitlement. He believed order made him invisible, that being respected meant being untouchable. I felt something crack inside me, not heartbreak, not shock, clarity. I understood then. He didn't betray my grandmother. He replaced her, quietly, conveniently, the way you replace furniture once it stops matching the room. I didn't confront him. I didn't cry. I didn't ask why. I went quiet. Not the kind of quiet my grandmother learned. Not shrinking. Not surrender. This was the quiet that sharpens. I replayed everything. Every dinner. Every correction. Every moment my grandmother disappeared a little more while he stayed intact. I watched how he moved through the world, how people leaned toward him, how his name opened doors before he even spoke. That's when I understood what he truly valued. Not love, not loyalty, control, reputation. He built his life like a display case, clean, impressive, untouchable. So I stopped reacting, stopped signaling anger, stopped being too much. I became precise. I learned when to listen and when to store information away. I learned which family members talked, which ones stayed silent, which ones worshipped him the hardest. He thought my calm meant defeat, that I had finally learned my place. He was wrong. I wasn't calming down. I was choosing the angle. And once you see the structure clearly, bringing it down becomes a matter of timing, not emotion, timing. I didn't rush. Men like him don't fall from explosions. They collapse from exposure. I started collecting without being seen. Dates, patterns, small inconsistencies he assumed no one tracked. He loved documentation, schedules, proof. So I learned his language. I noticed when he stayed longer at the neighbor's house than he admitted. When his stories changed, depending on who was listening. When his version of events needed correcting. I didn't accuse. I asked questions. Soft ones. Harmless ones. I listened while others filled the silence for him. Family members, friends, people who trusted him too much to protect him properly. That's the thing about men obsessed with reputation. They build their own witnesses. I chose the moment carefully. A gathering he couldn't skip. A room full of people who believed in him. Public, clean, unavoidable. No screaming, no theatrics. Just enough truth, spoken clearly, to make sure no one could pretend they didn't hear it. He thought control meant preparation. He never considered someone else might be preparing too, and that was his mistake. It was a family gathering, the kind he loved. Food laid out perfectly, laughter timed just right, everyone present. He was relaxed, at ease, certain of the role he played. I waited until the room settled, until forks slowed, until attention drifted naturally to him. Then I stood up. No shaking, no rage. I spoke the way he taught everyone else to speak. Slow, clear, controlled. I named dates, not accusations, timelines. I mentioned doors that closed too late at night, visits that didn't match the stories, details that aligned too cleanly to be coincidence. I didn't look at him. I looked at the table. That's what made them listen. Someone laughed at first, nervously. Then I said her name, the neighbor. Silence snapped into place. He finally looked at me, really looked. For the first time, he didn't recognize the room anymore, because truth doesn't need volume, it only needs witnesses. And once a room hears it together, There is no polite way to give control back. I watched his face change in real time. Not anger, not outrage, calculation. He searched the room for alignment, for support, for someone to restore the balance he depended on. No one moved. His mouth opened, then closed again. Once, twice. He tried to speak carefully, the way he always did. But control only works when the room agrees to participate. Someone shifted in their chair. Another looked down at their plate. A third stared at the wall like it suddenly mattered. He realized it then. The silence wasn't his anymore. Every explanation he considered would only confirm what I'd already placed between them. Facts don't argue. They sit there, heavy. He smiled reflexively, the same smile he used to correct my tone, to smooth tension, to reset the room. It didn't work, because smiles require permission too. For the first time in my life, I saw him without the structure protecting him. Just a man, exposed, measured, useful, or unnecessary. And this time, he wasn't the one deciding. I didn't wait for apologies. They weren't for me anyway. The room stayed quiet long after I sat down. Not the comfortable kind, the kind that rearranges people. My grandmother didn't look at him. She didn't have to. Something in her posture shifted, not relief, permission. She stood up later that night without asking anyone. Left the table early, no explanation, no one stopped her. That's how I knew it worked. Families don't change in loud moments. They change when silence chooses a new owner. He avoided my eyes after that, not out of shame, out of recognition. He finally understood what it feels like to be seen without consent. I didn't feel victorious. I felt clear, lighter, like a room with windows opened after years of controlled air. He thought he could replace her quietly, erase her without consequence. I made sure the entire family learned the truth together. And once they did, forgetting became impossible. Some men lose control in private. I made him lose it where it mattered most, in front of everyone.